As you all might know, I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan, so this is not going to be a segment that I might enjoy whatsoever. This is not going to be something that I'm going to want to talk about. But his post-game speech definitely caught my eye, so I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm just going to start out right now. Kyrie Irving made his return to the Brooklyn Nets, and he absolutely destroyed us, with Luka Doncic dropping 36 points. Kyrie Irving ended the game with 36 points, and Luka ended with 35 and 18. They absolutely killed us on their offensive side of the ball, and we couldn't do anything on either side to stop it. Cam Thomas did the same thing that he did the previous night, go 6 for 16 and only get 16 points. So, as I mentioned earlier with Cam Thomas, his offensive production is very, very, very important to the team and its success. And if he's not producing on offense, then he can't produce on defense, and that is just going to hurt his team in the end. And it ended up hurting my team. It was all Kyrie and Luka tonight. Nobody else showed up to play, and it was very sad to watch. As a Nets fan, seeing Kyrie play all the games that he can with the Mavs is very, very painful for me to watch. Because he could have been winning so many games with us, but no, he has to just ruin it all and request a trade and to get out of Brooklyn. And oh my goodness, it was the worst time of my life. You know what? Let me take you back to about 2019, before the pandemic came in and ruined my life. Kyrie and Kevin Durant signed with the Brooklyn Nets for years and years of nothing but terrible basketball to watch around the New York area. Since I lived in Jersey, most of the games were they were bad. Like, the Nets were bad, the Knicks were bad. They were always bad. Like, New York sports. We just have a history of just being bad. And for some time, they had Carmelo Anthony on the Knicks, so I would tune in to watch that, but it wasn't all that good. The Knicks were just mediocre, and Carmelo Anthony was he was being hated on by a lot of the Knicks players. They were tired of him. But once he left, I got some enjoyment watching Melo. He might not have done much on the offensive side of the ball in terms of being flashy, but he was very interesting to watch. But after he left, there was nothing really to watch for basketball on the New York side of things. So once KD and Kyrie signed, that was probably the most exciting days of my life, because I was finally going to be able to see KD and Kyrie every single day whenever I wanted to tune in and watch a basketball game. And KD being hurt the first year didn't help, but Kyrie started out strong, scoring 50 points in his first game as a Brooklyn Net, and he almost made the sickest game winner in NBA history towards the end, but that ended up not happening, unfortunate. But it really seemed like this team was destined to do great things with these two. Then COVID-19 came, and since the Nets had no chance in winning, Kyrie was deactivated for that season. Then the next season came in, and that's when my expectations went through the roof with this team. It was a big three with them trading for James Harden, and it was arguably one of the best offensive big threes ever assembled. Because everybody on that team, every one of those three players on that team could create a shot for themselves, and they could create a shot for other people. I personally thought at that time, if there was going to be an ISO lineup that would win a chip, it was going to be that lineup. I had a lot of faith in Kevin Durant. I had a lot of faith in Harden and in Kyrie. But they didn't really play together that much, and they only played 13 games. I didn't really think much of it at first. But once it kept happening, I realized this was going to be a big problem with Kyrie just deciding to not play in some of these games. He, for some reason, the following year, when we failed in the postseason, and then came COVID-19 in the following year, where the COVID-19 laws, in New York, which restricted Kyrie from playing in all of these games. Now, usually that wouldn't bother me, because Kyrie would just essentially need to play these games and just take the vaccine, and it would be fine. But we all know what happens. Kyrie doesn't take the vaccine, and it doesn't look like he wants to play. If you really, really wanted to play, you would just take the vaccine so you could play. Him not taking it made it seem like he just didn't want to play whatsoever, and I just couldn't stand it and Harden couldn't stand it whatsoever, and that's why Harden requested a trade. Similar to how I don't like Ben Simmons for not playing, Kyrie just infuriates me even more because he's such a great player. And when he played with LeBron, he didn't have this problem. So what happened? Why all of a sudden now, when Kyrie doesn't have LeBron, he just doesn't want to play games? Once he just chose not to take the vaccine, I immediately lost hope for this team. And once he started playing again and they went on a win streak, I was very optimistic. I was very optimistic with like, oh, they could probably do this. And then Kyrie just slams us with a trade out of nowhere. I don't know how like his character just changed completely in that span, but regardless, with all of the problems that happened and all the drama, all the media attention that happened in Brooklyn, Kyrie had this to say at the end of his postgame. He said, "If I didn't get injured versus the Bucks, do I still ask for a trade? If KD's foot wasn't on the line, are we talking about a different legacy here? If James doesn't ask for a trade, all the woulda, coulda, shoulda, hopefully after this night we can put it to rest," end quote. And that's why the title is Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, because that's what he said. And that's the story of the lineup. They would've, they could've, they should've. They should have done all of these things. And my interpretation of this quote is just him trying to blow this off. Like, he's just trying to forget about his failure in Brooklyn, similar to how he's trying to forget his failure in Boston. And I could answer all of these questions. So the first question, if I didn't get injured versus the Bucks, do I still ask for a trade? I don't know if he asked for a trade because we were on a 12-game winning streak. And he just decides to ask for a trade out of nowhere. Oh my gosh. And as a Brooklyn Nets fan, that just infuriates me. We were winning. We were doing a great job. But he just requested a trade out of nowhere. And it's like, why? Even Kevin Durant was shocked about this. So that answers the first question about Kyrie. And if KD's foot wasn't on the line, are we talking about a different legacy? I'm not entirely sure if we are, because after Kevin Durant left Golden State, what has he done in the postseason? Legitimately, what has Kevin Durant done in the postseason without Golden State? He lost in the second round against the Bucks. Granted, his foot was on the line. Then he gets swept by the Boston Celtics, putting up one of the worst performances in Game 2 that I've ever seen. And then he goes to Phoenix, where he once again puts up a terrible performance in a closeout game at home in Game 6 against the Denver Nuggets. So with all of that in mind, what has he done? What has he done in the postseason without that ridiculous Golden State team? He's done nothing. So honestly, the legacy for KD would be exactly the same, because he hasn't done anything to prove that he can be that guy in the postseason. And he might have proved it in Golden State, but I'm sorry, you cannot be the guy when you're surrounded by those guys, and just those guys. You simply cannot. And as for the next question, if James doesn't ask for a trade, if you were playing and if you took the vaccine, he wouldn't have requested a trade. I am 100% certain about this. He would not have requested a trade if Kyrie were to actually play the game and if he were to look like he wanted to play the game. I cannot stand Kyrie and his off-the-court antics, as you can tell. I love it when he plays. He's a great player, but when he talks, I just think he's using his First Amendment rights incredibly poorly. And as for, that was the only thing that he said in his quote, what followed after, woulda, coulda, shoulda, that's just him deflecting and trying to not make this a big deal, like how, it was just like, it was stuff outside of my control. And that's what he does. He blames things outside of his control when he definitely had control of the situation to a certain point. It's just he didn't bother. It's that simple. Kyrie just didn't bother. And it infuriates me how he tries to deflect all of this on his other players, on his teammates, and like on other situations that happen. And it's like, You could have done things to remedy that situation if you would have just played. But no, you had to sit out, and you want to blame the mayor for you not taking the vaccine. And it's for no reason, because he has said several times that he knew that COVID-19 was real. He just wasn't taking the vaccine just because. It makes no sense to me. Zero sense whatsoever. And him saying this quote, deflecting and doing all that kind of stuff with it just shows that Kyrie he's a yapper. That's all he is. And I don't think this Kyrie and Luka relationship, I don't think it's going to work in the long run. Like, they might be working now, but eventually Kyrie is going to be unhappy. It's just going to happen. It's been happening with Boston. It happened to Brooklyn. It happened with Cleveland. He always brings a problem. And even with Boston, he said he planned on re-signing with Boston. That didn't happen. So all the things that he might seem happy on Dallas, but that might just be a lie. We have no idea with Kyrie, because given all of the things that he's done in the offseason and all of the drama that he brings to a team. I will say, however, that so far with the Mavs, he hasn't necessarily been that bad. He was injured, which is why he was missing several games. But in the long run, I don't see this Mavs team being a team that can compete and a team that can make it far into the postseason and riding Luka's back. Especially with the Los Angeles Clippers being the 1 seed. In fact, you know what? I might as well talk about how the Clippers, they tend to own the Dallas Mavericks. Having Kyrie on the roster, I don't think that's going to change the situation whatsoever. If they run into the Clippers, they are most likely going to lose. And the media around it is saying that, like, oh, Luka owns the Clippers. That's not true. Luka hasn't won a single series against the Clippers. He might play well against the Clippers, but again, as I mentioned before, ISO-heavy lineups, they aren't going to win you championships, especially when it's those two ISOing. Kyrie is another example of a player that hasn't done anything in the postseason without LeBron James. What has he done in the postseason without LeBron? He underperformed with Boston several times. He got injured in one of the postseasons with Boston, and then he underperformed, saying, I will never shoot 8 for 22 again. What does he shoot? Shoots 7 for 22, and then he deflects. And then after that postseason, he leaves, and the Boston Celtics end up doing better without him. That should speak volumes. The Boston Celtics right now, with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they're doing miles better without Kyrie on the team. Obviously, I can't say the same for my Brooklyn Nets, but when you lose good players like James Harden, Kevin Durant, it's definitely not going to be something that the team can adjust so easily. But with that, those are my opinions on Kyrie and his quote and what he said in the post game. He's just deflecting. He's just yapping. He's doing what he does best. And with that, we are out of time with the second segment. Tune in for the third segment, where I give an update on the dunk contest and its participants, and to see exactly where the dunk contest should go and what direction they should take, whether they should have it in the All-Star game or whether they should not have it in the All-Star weekend. So tune in right after this short break. I will be right back.